Hello and welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival. The DIF is an online festival of ideas curated by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that asks the question, what if we could redesign everything? My name is Leo, and in this session today, titled Leading an Innovative Path to Circular Economy, top organizational leadership and sustainability scientists, scholars and alumni from Arizona State University, which was named the US's most innovative institution for 3 straight years, will discuss and invite dialogue from you, the DIF audience, around the idea of responsible leadership that leads to a truly effective and impactful circular economy. I'm happy to introduce today's speakers, Raj Bush, George Bastille, Philip White, and Karen Sissel, who will be yours for the next 45 minutes or so. But before I hand things over to Raj, who will be leading the conversation today, I just want to remind you all that, reminding you all watching this live on the session page, that you can post your comments and questions in the comments section just below this video. And we very much encourage you guys watching online to ask as many questions as you want. And please do keep those questions coming through right throughout, and hopefully the speakers will have an opportunity to address them in the next 45 minutes or so. Well, without any further ado, I'll hand things over to Raj in Arizona. Raj.
Thanks, Leo. Hello and welcome to DIF 2017. My name is Raj Butch, and we are coming to you from Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. ASU is a pioneer university partner with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Today, I'm joined by 2 of my colleagues from here at ASU, along with a leading sustainability professional, to discuss the idea of leading an innovative path to a circular economy. We'll be sharing with you insights and approaches to driving materials and design minimization and circularity through leadership and innovation. First, some introductions. As I mentioned, I am Raj Butch, and I am the Director of Sustainability Practice with ASU's International Development Office, and I also work with the Walton Sustainability Solutions Initiatives here at ASU. With me and on my right is George Bastille, Professor of Practice at the ASU School of Sustainability. George holds a PhD in biophysics from Berkeley and was a postdoctoral researcher at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. He currently serves on the boards of nonprofit organizations and new ventures and advises Fortune 500 clients and startups on sustainability strategies, operations, tools, and actions. He's also one of the designers and principal instructors for the Executive Masters in Sustainable Leadership at ASU.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, George. On my left here, also from ASU, is Philip White, Associate Professor with the Design School. Philip is an ecological design strategist who develops ecologically intelligent products and systems. He helps students, practitioners, and companies apply eco-design strategies and advanced environmental impact assessment methods. Philip is the chair of the Eco-Design section of the Industrial Designers Society of America, and in 2013, co-authored Ocala Practitioner, a primer used by more than 40 schools of product design around the world. Thanks, Philip. Thanks for joining us. And finally, joining us from Cummins, Inc. is Karen Sissel. Karen is the Director of Environmental Sustainability for Cummins, which is a global power provider that designs, manufactures, distributes, and services engines and technologies with dealer locations in more than 190 countries and territories globally. Based in Columbus, Indiana, Cummins is a Fortune 500 company with over 55,000 employees worldwide. Karen has been in her current position for 6 years and completed her Executive Master of Sustainability Leadership degree at ASU in 2016. Thanks for joining us, Karen. So to kick things off, I will hand it over to Karen to give some background on the work she and her colleagues are doing at Cummins. Karen.
Great. Thank you, Raj. Thanks for the introduction. Also, I want to say thank you to ASU for the important role that it plays in sustainability, and along with the partnership with Walton Initiatives, really helps to prepare sustainability leaders in this time of disruptive innovation. So this is a time that requires us to be bold, to be confident, and be courageous. So it's very important work. If you could go to the next slide, please. So I work at Cummins and have been here for 13 years. And we are getting ready to celebrate our 100th birthday in 2019. So you could say that was a pretty successful startup company long ago. It started with a banker and his driver, who was also a mechanic, that partnered together in a small Midwestern town in the United States. So we've done very well with that business model. And that business model was really about innovation. And honestly, at the time, it was about disruptive technology and innovation. So if you could go to the next slide. And we've always taken this comprehensive approach to innovation, you know, and now it's even more important because the world is in a period of great change. So we want to combine our 100-year history of our integrity, our care for our employees and communities, and plus this technical leadership, and really look at this as a time for great opportunity. And I think that's the first thing that's most important for disruptive innovation. It requires this type of mindset. So we are really an independent power solution company. We help our customers with the power that they need, the choice that they want to do the jobs. So if you really think about it, we have to actually see the future first to be able to innovate and advance. And I think that really plays into why we're getting ready to celebrate our 100th birthday and hopefully prepare for our next 100th. And from a historical perspective, you know, we spent over 20 years working, and we said yes to emissions regulations years ago, and, you know, to reduce NOx, to reduce particulate matter. And we now have near zero technologies that can help solve air pollution. And so we're working with governments all around the world to adopt these solutions that are ready now. And we just made some recent announcements, and, you know, it's all big stuff, right? Whether it's a, you know, moving forward with Gillig, a customer on electric bus markets, you know, an all electric semi-tractor, working with our customer at Microsoft on helping them power what's next for data centers, and using our innovation and solutions. We're really working from a backup power solution to actual prime power, including natural gas fuel cells. Okay, if you go to the next slide, please. So we will continue our focus on greenhouse gas and emissions, but we also want to set our aim to expand our leadership in circular economy, and this tenacity as well. And we already have great experience in the space. So we've been providing remanufacturing technical leadership for over 60 years. That's 60, not 6. And we did this to begin with to solve a customer need. And now we look forward to expanding our lens to further helping solve a societal issue. And I think that will be more important when we're solving customer issues, our customer needs. We will in the future be working on societal issues as well. And so when we looked at the magnitude of our problem for, you know, resource efficiency, we looked at this and have used this visual as a way to really share. If you look at where it says customer-driven demand, that really signifies a bridge. And we're all on that bridge to a point where we will face a resource-constrained world. It's really just a mathematical equation, right? So, you know, in just a matter of 13 years, look at the amount of material extraction that we'll need to increase to solve you know, a rising middle class, the amount of energy, and we think that energy will even need to be increased with electrification. And the one big disruptor in my mind is water, because we're going to need 40% more fresh water. And the fact is we have as much potable water today as we will have in 2030 or 2050. So really you know, companies, communities, we all need to look at, and industry partners need to look at, how can we solve this? And so the bridge signifies that we're all going to go somewhere over that bridge, right? And what we want is a soft landing. And that is what circular economy is about. It's about really looking at how do we use less, use better, use again. And we use these terms in Commons more so than circular economy because it just really helps our employees, I guess, grasp what that means. But really at the end of the day, it's really about, setting our mindset to live within the natural resource boundaries that are provided. So if you go to the next. So some of the things that we've done in the space is just get the right people together in a room. When you work for an engineering company and you frame the right problem in a way that can be solvable, it's just fun to watch, right? Because you ask a few how might we's, and I've been, just really excited for where we're heading. And so for each of these, we're just looking through a lens of having a waste minimization culture, really decoupling our business growth from natural resource use, and then looking at how can we do that. And so for, use less, it's really, it's out there. It's how do we use 3D printing and advanced manufacturing to really solve some of this material efficiency needs. Really excited about design tools for the multidisciplinary optimization. And now we have these available that allow us to automate multi-physics simulation and then use intelligent algorithms that allow us to truly quantify trade-offs. This is very important in technology because now we can look at performance, durability, and environmental impact at the same time. And then it also allows us to look at the full design space. So we can transition from tens of design opportunities to thousands. So just imagine what that could do for really expanding, our design capabilities. And then, just really looking at what all do we need to do to decouple growth from the natural resources, and then use again, like I said earlier, we've been remanufacturing for over 60 years. And we just opened a new technical center that's focused on research and development and remanufacturing. We're making strategic investments in analysis-led design and other tools that help us advance our capability to recondition and remanufacture parts after the aftermarket. And we also want to start thinking about what are the things, expand our thinking, and as the future progresses, how else do we future-proof? We have a proven history of creating opportunities that allow us to focus on solving world problems. So what does that look like? And some of these things we're not doing yet, but just part of that question on a closed loop business ownership model, or, even one day, and definitely not today, but, a mixed content where you can get new and remanufactured parts together. And so if you progress to the next one. And so we really look at our sustainability in three major phases. The first is we were doing great work without a comprehensive global strategy, but still, amazing efforts. And then I led the effort in 2014 for this, really looking at our life cycle approach. What's the biggest things we can do? Where can we have our biggest impact? And we have some pretty difficult goals that we set for 2020 in this space. But now when we look at it, and I had this slide actually before this webcast, and really it's the age of disruption. The world is going so fast. So what we want to do to celebrate our 100th birthday is really look out for a new comprehensive strategy that's about thriving in this emerging future, where we know that natural resources use is more than just within our facilities and operations. How do we ensure that 88% of our water footprint is in raw material extraction and processing? So how do we ensure that this is part of our strategy? Societal needs will be so critical for us in the future. How do we help our customers and help the society? And then really take a look at how natural resource constraints could even really drive this changing economic model. And how could we provide and be a part of that solution? And that really is kind of what we're doing as a, just an opener, Raj. So
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Next, I'm going to ask George to talk about business leadership and circular economy.
Thanks, Raj, and thank you, Karen. Karen, as she said, is one of our executive master's graduates, and a phenomenal example of how you integrate innovation and sustainability and circularization. And I don't want to lose that excitement that Karen just shared. Innovation is something that we as people do. It really takes a combination of creativity, which all of us bring to the table. We just have that. Permission, both from leadership and through resources, and maybe some models that help you along the way. And then a new perspective, whether it's circular economy, sustainability, and innovation just pops out. And we just heard that from Karen. I mean, again, I don't want to lose for everybody that Karen just described a company that is a combustion engine company from its birth. And through what we just heard is now transforming itself into a company for the future where maybe combustion it goes away or it isn't the same, but people are still going to need engines. They're still going to need to be able to do work. So how do we innovate our way towards sustainable work? So this is a big picture of innovation. And let me tell you another story. A similar story to Karen's in a sense, about light. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Philips here, which is a company we've worked with. And I think it's a tremendous example of working towards circularization. So Philips is another old company in terms of having been around for a long time, and another innovator in everything that makes us today what we are. And what they found is that they used to sell light bulbs in various forms. And over time, on one hand, everybody can make a great light bulb now. So they've innovated their way to a place which is awesome, which was we can all have access to exceptional lighting equipment. At the same time, the field of lighting has become much more complicated as we use light in different ways, right? So here's the shift that Philips has made, and not just in their lighting, but in what they're doing is moving from light as a product to light as a service, right? So instead of selling light bulbs and light fixtures, it's how can we help you light what you want to light? How can we help you use light to do things you weren't able to do? How can we help you use light to increase security? How can we help you to use light to work better? How can we help you to use light to go to places you haven't gone before? And what's interesting about this is that this fundamentally changes the business. A little bit of what Karen alluded to at the end there. You have to have different relationships, right? Now you're a service provider as well as a product provider. You have to have different relationships with people, right? Interestingly enough, it also lets you differentiate. You're no longer just another light bulb manufacturer. You're somebody who's bringing a suite of services to the table. You're somebody who is able to maybe adapt equipment, able to work with folks. And intriguingly, it brings circularization to the fore, right? So the next slide. So when you move from product to product and service or to service, all of a sudden, having a product that is now part of your service model gives you incentive to take care of the product, to increase its durability, to increase its remanufacturing capability. Some of the things we've heard from Karen, that they've been thinking about this for 60 years, right? So now, all of a sudden, when you're in this circular model and you think as a service provider, it makes sense to you, logical sense to you, right? Your creativity is being harnessed in a new way, in a new perspective, right? And if you go to the next slide, it also has just good old-fashioned business 101 value propositions. You increase your value to the customer. You decrease your risk, for example, by having a differentiated service, by having new alternatives, by having other ways to make revenue, and you build your brand. And this last point is very interesting because if we go to the next slide, the big opportunity in here is to transform yourself from being somebody who brings a thing to the table and that disappears to being a partner, to being a mentor, to being a leader. And this is really important. It's important because one thing, you don't just throw away Yoda. You might find other mentors and you might find additional leaders. But that person who's a partner, that business that's a partner, right? That's not a business that you just replace readily. That's a business you develop relationships with, right? Now, it's intriguing that circularization both brings this opportunity to the table, lets you differentiate, lets you think about how to be a solutions partner, right? Lets you think about how to be a leader in a new way. It also creates a challenge for any organization. So next slide. So this is the challenge that we've tackled here, and I think that all circular economy businesses, or businesses that are applying the circular economy for disruptive and, importantly, sustainable innovation, are going to need to address. And that is, when you become a Yoda, when you become a mentor and a partner in your business community, what does that leadership look like that is required to execute on that opportunity? And if you see in this, just in this figure here, we have sort of 4 bubbles that we often fill in that are important. A lot of people think of the circular economy and they think of technological challenges, material challenges. Those are very big challenges. The leadership challenge of building out these businesses is also really important. You need to have an overall sustainability lens so that your circularization is headed towards sustainability, so that you don't circularize your way out of one problem and into a new one. You need to be able to communicate. At the heart of any of these issues today is communications as a challenge. These are new ideas, new perspectives. You need to know your audience. You actually need to be able to understand what the existing leadership approaches are and the leadership opportunities. You need to be able to lead from the top. You need to be able to lead from the bottom. You need to be able to lead in partnership. When you build these new relationships in circularization, you're working with a much larger group and a much more diverse groups of folks. And finally, circularization is very strong in helping us bring a global context into all of this. So these 4 components, and this is something that Karen has gone through, for example, in the executive program here: strategic sustainability, communications, leadership approaches, and global context. And when you put them all together, you start to have the leadership model that then can be coupled to the circular economy model. And if you take us to the last slide here, this is where it gets really exciting. And you heard it in Karen's pitch. You heard the thrill that is here in transforming or building organizations that bring all the creativity to the table of not an individual, but the creativity of enterprise, human enterprise. You couple that with the circular economy engine as a set of permission, a way to think, a new way to think about resources, a new way to get permission to do things, to try things, to fail, to succeed. And finally, you couple all of that with the perspective of 21st century leadership that includes sustainability. And when you guys put that together, you really get innovation for a sustainable future. And I think with examples like Philips, with examples like Cummins, with examples we're seeing from a number of the circular economy companies, when coupled with this kind of leadership, you really get exciting innovation for a sustainable future. So there you go. So I'm looking forward to talking with you guys some more about that.
All right. Thank you, George. And with that, I'll hand over to Philip, and he can talk about the design aspects of a circular economy and innovation. Philip.
Thank you very much. I wanted to say a little bit about the design school. The industrial design program is part of the design school. We have 5 programs altogether in the design school, which is somewhat unusual, especially here in the States. Within the industrial design program, we have a really strong emphasis on integrating environmental issues in all of our different programs, our degrees, and certainly all of our studios. One of the programs which has been around since, I believe, 2003 is Innovation Space, was created in the industrial design program. It's extremely unusual program because it requires students from different disciplines to be in a design studio for an entire year working on a sponsored project from an external client. There are faculty from the different schools, so that we have students from design, from business, from engineering, and from sustainability, all working in small teams. So it replicates to some extent the product development teams that occur in the real world in businesses when a new concept is being developed. So this is a very popular format to have courses. We have a very strong social and environmental ethic in the courses. The truth is, being able to push through this kind of thing through the university system is challenging because, it's like you have to slice up credit hours and who gets paid what, this and that between the schools. But it's a very exciting model. It's very disruptive. Some of the materials that we've been using in the design school include Ocala. I'm the primary author of Ocala. It was initially created through a partnership with, or part of it was created through a partnership with the Industrial Designers Society of America and the US EPA. And so it's a very strong scientific basis, and it includes a lot of information, a very wide range of things, but including life cycle assessment and circular economy somewhat. So for instance, this is a diagram that we first published in 2003, and it has basically it shows the circular economy as a concept, and it shows some of the central concepts of the circular economy, which is product reuse, component reuse, material recycling, really very much at the core. And so this sort of I think the term that the circular economy term was being rolled out pretty much at the same time. So we thought it was very interesting that this came out. The next slide. This is also part of Ocala, and these are the eco-design strategies that we modified. The originals came from Han Brzett and Caroline von Hemel from Delft University. We've really filled these out quite a bit more. And they're organized in 8 different categories, basically following the life cycle of a manufactured product system. What we did was we highlighted those eco-design strategies that are directly, not indirectly, but directly associated with the circular economy. And of course, there's can be arguments about all of this, but what doesn't qualify. But we thought it was kind of interesting, sort of where this fell out. Of course, there's things that are relevant throughout most of the life cycle, but a great deal of it has to do with system longevity. How do we ensure that the lifespan of product systems, or the maximize the amount of service that they're delivering over their life cycle? How do we enable them to transition into some kind of new system or into providing some new kind of service? This is one of the most kind of mystical and confusing sets of strategies. And of course, what happens when they're no longer useful to anyone or no longer wanted? Oftentimes, product systems are discarded when they're still functioning. They're no longer wanted. So there's a long list of or many strategies associated with that. And that these are at the very root, as many of you know, these are at the very root of sort of helping us develop new circular system business models. Next. I also teach a circular design studio. It's a graduate studio here at ASU. The graduate students in the 3rd semester take a studio and where we travel abroad. And so our studio, we went to the Netherlands. We saw a lot of things. Here's just a few things. We saw, electronic product recycling, which is required by law in Europe, but to us who are not from Europe, it's very exciting to see, especially for product designers, to see 2-story tall mounds of electronic products being processed. Then these are more common, but for instance, next is this restaurant. I mean, we're designers from all different disciplines, including architecture, interior design, graphic design, etc., and industrial design as well, of course. Here's this old factory that this was actually Philips factory. This was a building that made steam for the other buildings, and so this was had a bunch of giant engines in it. It was this old, really beautiful building with lots of stories. and they converted this into a really beautiful restaurant. And as this happens with many of these old buildings that are repurposed, sections of the building are left very raw, and then contrasted with the sections that are a bit more refurbished. So, and we also saw these are just a few things, but examples of 3D printed buildings. This was in Amsterdam. These sectional walls made out of 3D printed plastic. Some of these sections were made out of recycled polyethylene terephthalate soda bottles. These are some examples of circular systems. More recently, I've been focusing quite a bit on durability. I'm doing quite a bit of research in US law and how it motivates or does not motivate organizations to maximize the life cycles of systems, and what this means for design and business models. I've published a paper through IDSA, and you hear some things that I think really interesting. I mean, that I think are topical, well, internationally and here, especially in the U.S. We need to do a much better job at documenting materials, because it's very difficult for recycled materials to be accepted in the market if it's difficult to know what's in them. And so this is a big problem internationally that needs to be developed, and nobody's doing it. I mean, certainly not enough. And again, the second part is basically what I'm researching right now, which is, what are the aspects of law that are, maybe there's some wiggle room to tweak the law, or what's important about the law with regards to especially like warranties and the legal rights of consumers, et cetera. And then of course there's the social side of things. There's many different topics we could discuss, but for instance, is there a role for the circular economy in the informal or the shadow economies of low-income parts of the world, where people make a living off of picking up garbage? So is this this is one of the many social things that we could investigate. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Philip. So we've heard from Karen about how Cummins has evolved over 60 going on 100 years as they transition towards these new business models and circular economy. George talked about creativity and innovation and business leadership, and Philip talked about how on the design side, innovation comes in and the different strategies that are being applied. I'd like to pose a question first to Karen, but it applies to George and Philip with your experience as well. Karen, can you talk about how Cummins has evolved organizationally, what your senior leaders do to support the evolution of circular economy at Cummins? Have there been organizational changes over the last decade or so that you can talk about? And then George and Philip, if you can also add your thoughts on organizational transformation to support circular economy transitions.
Yeah, so for us, it was we're looking at, and we didn't really have to reorganize senior leadership, so that was good because they've always been involved. We are a an innovation or technical leadership company. So and what we've done, and our current CEO started out as a student worker, right, on the line. So he's grown up in the business. And so one thing that we have done, though, is we use Tom Linebarger has been a big part of the fabric of our environmental sustainability strategy. So we just met with him for 4 hours to go over our strategy, what we're thinking, what else should we be considering? And so he's an important piece to this. But we do have scorecards for our current things, our current goals, right? And so that go all the way up to the Cummins leadership level and shared with the board. And as a way to get this across, since we are a very large global company, I lead this cross-functional, cross-business, cross-regional team that really sets the direction, that's the voice and catalyst, just to make sure that we're all pointing in the same direction. And once we point everyone in the same direction, then we can just unleash people to come up with things that honestly we would have never considered. And so I think it's putting together this cross-functional, cross-business team that's really helped us put people in the right direction and then really motivate people to act. This is the first area I've ever been in here in environmental sustainability where you're not going fast enough, right? Employees want to be a part of it and they want to go faster. So that makes it even more exciting.
So I've seen three sort of different broad models in the space of what changes within the business. One is like what Karen just said, you don't last 100 years without having a culture of innovation. So I think Karen is describing an organization that is powered by innovation. It's exciting to them. They can fail forward and they've been able to use their current systems. In some other organizations, when you change the circularity, like I said, it really can change the relationship, it can change the business structure, and it can be profound. It can be profound in terms of you're really going from maybe a production company to a service company, and you have whole new sets of relationships and whatnot that need to be built. And then here's something that's really interesting that's going on right now. If you guys look, for example, at benefit corporations in the United States or other startups and startups coming out of Europe, there's a whole new group of organizations that are starting with the combined goal of both being functional businesses or not, whatever they are, and being sustainable, being circular. And those organizations are actually pioneering new business models, new cooperative business models, new joint, for-profit, non-profit business models. And so there, I would recommend everybody go out and, look at some of these benefit corporations, for example, and see how they're actually executing on the idea that their circularization and sustainability mission is one of the primary things that differentiates them in the marketplace. And often, whether it's in food spaces or textiles or the auto industry or whatnot, that's what lets them get their foot into the door of what are currently very mature, hard to enter business categories. And to me, that's really exciting.
Thanks, George. Philip, your thoughts on organizational transformation for CE?
Well, I think it's clear to anyone who's paying attention that the organizations that have enlightened and educated leadership are at the forefront. And recently, for instance, we had the sustainability director from Google here, sort of blew us all away with how incredibly progressive they are. All of their energy is carbon offset, and they're just doing amazing work. And that is because at the upper management, throughout the upper management, they have full support. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it's just, if you're in an organization where the upper management is not enlightened or educated on the matter, it's very difficult to force that upon the upper management. So, some would say it's just a matter of time until the older generation is gone. But I don't know what the answer is in those situations. But if from a societal point of view, it would be great if we had some kind of incentives for organizations adopt more responsible positions.
Right.
But it's a difficult nut to crack.
Thanks, Philip. We have a question from the DIF audience. How can government or policymakers support the development of innovation and new leadership development of CE businesses? Philip, you talked about doing some research in that area. If you could give us your perspective on that, and I'll ask George and Karen to do the same.
Well, there are different models in different countries, and of course, throughout in the U.S., certainly there historically, the government has done a lot. There's much more that it could do, of course, without a question. And our present, government is very, regressive in this case. But what governments can do all kinds of things, including incentivizing various activities, giving taxing and giving breaks, various kinds of activities, and trying to encourage businesses and giving them, for instance, setting up workshops and setting up meetings and encouraging the different parties to try to get together to find solutions. Right, there's many things they can do.
George, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear, Karen, I know you have a lot of government experience in your field, so I'd love to hear from you. Let me just briefly build on what Philip said. I think that, one, businesses can help lead governments to better decisions. So we've seen that is a possibility. What we've seen in the US just recently is we've seen the rise of local and regional government. Some of our cities, for example, are stepping out because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where you have the businesses, that's where you have the individuals. It's also where you have the design opportunities.
Economic development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've seen U.S. Council of Mayors, we've seen leadership cities. And again, this isn't being done in a pejorative way. This is local government coming together around community to build the future you want. And we are seeing real policies. Of course, we just had the governor of California over at the climate talks. So I think that clearly government is a very, very important platform. It's where the people come together and vote one way or another on what they want the future to be. And where one door closes, another one can open. And I think it's really exciting what's going on at the local and regional level in the United States.
Karen, your perspective on legal and policy aspects, government trying to enable circular economy transitions?
Right. So in 2016, I attended a G7 Alliance on Resource Efficiency. So as a panelist, speaking on behalf as a supplier for the automotive industry. And so, what I realized there, whether a country or a region, I know in Europe, we call it circular economy. In the US, they call it sustainable material management. In Japan, it's still, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. So there was like this need from these different nations of saying, this is a real problem and will cause a true economic problem if we don't address it. And so I think that's that understanding and working together, and then doing just very similarly what we've done for greenhouse gas. I mean, we did a concept truck. We took a demonstration truck. So think of a 100-year-old technology. We worked with Peterbilt Motors and the Department of Energy. And we were able to take this concept of really, can you improve that, to reduce fuel efficiency, or actually make a 75% improvement in fuel efficiency with this concept. So in a way, it helps break the stigma of what can't be done to, okay, just watch, right? And I think those private partnerships, public partnerships are really critical, especially for when you're talking about technology that, you don't just make overnight. And it's technology that could truly make a huge difference, for the world. So it's very important to us, our relationship with government, and we help do the work that's needed to, look at making stringent, clear, and enforceable regulations, all things that are important to us, and that were important for us for the emission regulations that we've, been working towards for so long. And certain regions have greenhouse gas standards today, not all. I know the US, Japan do. And then, but these standards don't actually, it's more the market that's driving the change, not the regulations at this point.
Thanks, Karen. So I think what I heard there on organizational transformation, Karen talked about how at Cummins, the leadership supports what's happening, but even employees are demanding it. And so you have a cultural shift happening externally. So there's multidisciplinary going on within organizations. Externally, governments in some parts of the world are driving this change. In other parts of the world, the private sector is driving it. But ultimately, it's all about participatory engagement and bringing in stakeholders from all sectors to drive these kinds of sustainability and CE transitions. So thanks for that. My next question, again, to all three of you, is the social aspect. What are the strengths and areas of improvement for circular economy? I see some. You all three of you mentioned the society aspect, the social aspect. How do you tie CE to circular economy or to SDGs possibly? I'll just throw those few tidbits out, and maybe you can comment on. George, do you have a perspective?
Sure. So I think the exciting thing about the circular economy is thinking again of it as this almost a bucket of permission for you to innovate within. And because of that, we heard about your tools from Philip. There's a whole bunch of tools that you can bring together from the design space, from the business space. You can do, Six Sigma with circular economy, right? You can layer in sustainability principles from different perspectives into the circular economy model. I think to your question, Raj, one of the most important things is we tend to think about the circular economy from a physical resource aspect. I mean, that's just how people tend to think about it. You see the flows, there's a technical cycle, there's a bio cycle. It's just natural to think about it from that environmental side. But one of the big differences between environmentalism and sustainability is that we integrate the social dimensions and the environmental dimensions. And we have to do that with the circular economy. So what are the social frameworks, the social design guides, the social partnerships we can put in place so that we make sure when we innovate towards better lighting or better engines, when we innovate towards new business models, that we are including people, especially as we have half the planet. Maybe you want to talk to this, Raj. We have half the planet right now that is somewhat outside of our standard economic model, the developing world, quote unquote, and where we have most of the population growth is going to happen. How does circular economy enable social success? I think that's actually a grand challenge, and we're certainly working on some of that here. And I don't think we have the answers yet, but we certainly have ways to bring that in.
Yeah, so I'll just throw in to what George said, that the developing world, I think, presents a leapfrog opportunity. Circular economy for the developing world could be a leapfrog opportunity. I don't know that we've, of course, figured that out yet. Ellen MacArthur Foundation is doing a lot of work in this area, as are EMS partners around the world. So this is something that is a major challenge, and that's something we can bring circular economy in a broader, sustainable sense to drive solutions and outcomes in the developing countries. Philip, do you have a perspective on the social aspects? How do innovators integrate that into design?
Well, one of the challenges about social relationships is there are lots of different ways to evaluate them. And I mean, I think one of the approaches that is often taken that makes some sense is an economic approach, which is, are the needs of the poorest segments of the population being met? And if not, how can we meet those needs? So, I mean, that's, I think, one of the less confusing approaches, as opposed to, like a sort of an open-ended, creativity discussion about what is and isn't social. I think what is related to this is very much the question of labor and job opportunities and work opportunities. There's very real, it's a very real thing. And one of the primary differences between the economics in low-income parts of the world and the high-income parts of the world is that that labor in the high-income parts of the world is expensive, and labor in the low-income parts of the world is cheap. And so it's important to create labor, and give people work. It's to have things for people to do. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't be paying them anything. It means that we need to make sure we shouldn't be telling low-income parts of the world want to do, but we should certainly be trying to help them if they want increase economic activity that gives jobs to their people.
But I mean, this is exciting, isn't it, Philip? If you combine sort of a human lens on design, which I think designers have worked more and more, sort of moving out of the industrial era to a more, right? If you take the human lens, where again, there's all sorts of tools and approaches, and you either layer it into or add on the circular resource model, it doesn't close things off. It actually opens up the innovations. It's not like, oh my gosh, we've limited ourselves. It's quite the opposite, right? You start seeing entirely new ways to serve population. You start thinking about things like job creation as part of circularization. So it really is, I mean, I think, again, this is something we have to get around, that while circular economy is putting things into these loops, it actually, especially when you add the social dimension, it becomes something that opens up design innovation opportunities for folks.
That's right. Thanks, Karen. I think that this might be a good opportunity for you to tell us how Cummins is doing this in the countries around the world where you're trying to not only develop the business, but also drive social outcomes.
Right. And so, we just changed our vision and mission statement. And so I think that will be the telling, because this was done, by senior leadership. And you've heard me talk about us, having this broad range of power solutions for our customers' success as part of our vision. But our mission statement is to make people's lives better by powering a more prosperous world. That's our mission statement. And the idea there is that this is for our employees, our communities all over the world, right, where we live and work. And then a more prosperous world is that understanding that it takes a healthy, vibrant planet for us to make our products. And so that actually is being built into. So when we're talking about, using less by design, we're talking about water. So I'm looking at material science engineers saying, you are going to determine how much water we use, right? And that really changes things for people, right? Because it puts it on a personal level. People understand water and that need. And so, and things to do, like, we'll talk about, it's just 13 years. And I'll hear people go, oh, I'll still be alive. And I was like, yes, I hope so, right? And so, so the social part of it is what makes people go, right? Because, we've been, doing community partnership, since back in the day, right? Back in the, one of our previous CEOs actually walked with Martin Luther King Jr., right? So these, it's been part of our fabric all along. So I actually see circular economy and what we're doing with material efficiency as our, as a social impact, to be honest.
Go ahead,
so
George.
Karen, I just think that's a really exciting outcome that I saw in your work there, and the efforts of the company there, where you're not a combustion company, you're also, you're a water company, right? Mm-hmm. And being that sort of resource company, like you say, again, historically, that's kind of frightening, because you're like, oh my gosh, how does that limit us? But again, you've put up examples of how this transforms it into, okay, well, that's what we are. We are a water company and we're an innovation company. So how do we put those two things together and build a better future very pragmatically? So I've always thought that's a really, fun outcome from this sort of transformative thinking that you brought to the table there.
So George, it was actually you that helped with that, right? Because I turned in all the great work we did with greenhouse gas. I mean, we've done some amazing things, right, for greenhouse gas and emissions. And then you wrote one little sentence on one of my papers with, oh, that might not be what gets you. And I'm like, oh, wait, what's that mean? Right. And so it really helped open up that lens. So, yeah.
All right. So thanks, Karen, George, and Philip. We've come to the end of our session. So hope you really enjoyed this discussion on circular economy, innovation, and leadership to try and drive CE. This concludes our discussion. Before I hand it over to Leo, If you have any questions regarding this research or the work we are doing here at ASU, or if you'd like to get in touch with Karen, please let us know. You can visit us at sustainably-solutions.asu.edu, and we hope you continue to enjoy the DIF session throughout the remainder of the festival. Leo, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Raj. And thank you, George, Karen, and Philip, for offering your respective insights into what you're doing to incorporate circular thinking and circular economy in general into your work and teaching in an array of contexts to support the transition. And, you know, the circular economy is such a broad topic that I'm sure you guys could have carried on the conversation for quite a long time. But as Raj said, we only have a couple more moments left. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to point the viewers that are watching right now to a couple of really good sessions that we got coming up for the remaining 7 working days of the Disruptive Innovation Festival. And this is the first session from Arizona State University, but by no means the last. The next one coming up is this Friday, which is going to be released at 3 p.m. UK time, using the Circular Design Guide to guide new ventures with the director of the Risen Incubator, Alicia Marseille. Again, that's going to be released on Friday at 3 p.m. So look out for that one. And that's one of many sessions this year at the DIF from Arizona State University. So just type in Arizona in the search menu at thinkdiff.co, and you'll see them all pop up, and you can add them to your bookmarks and favorite them so that you don't miss out. And if you're looking for a 20-minute video this evening, I would highly recommend a video released, the third of 3 bespoke DIF exclusive interviews. This one being featuring Ken Webster, and that is titled A Flow of Wealth or A Wealth of Flows. And that heavily dips into his book that was released a few years back, A Wealth of Flows. And the first 2 videos, I mentioned that was the third of 3. The first 2, A Good Disruption, featured Martin Stukti, and The Performance Economy, featuring Walter Starhill, have been great hits. And I would thoroughly recommend watching them if you haven't, and watching that one with Ken coming up. And again, if you have missed them, you can look back at the thinkdiff.co schedule, along with a lot of live sessions that we've had over the last week and a half. And a really good one that happened today, a live session with Kate Rayworth, economist and the author of the acclaimed book Donut Economics. She came to the DIF Live studio, and she came in and talked about why and how we should all start thinking like 21st century economists. And again, that's just go to thinkdiff.co, and we've got a whole array of sessions in case you've missed them, including the recording of that live session. So again, thank you so much, Raj, George, Phil, and Karen for joining the DIF today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leo.
Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Well, until next time, we're out of time here today. But thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Bye. Cheers.